always it's nonsensical. Almost always. If you read it verbatim, line by line, it is. Because often, you know, it begins with a verb and it ends up 4 words later with an adjective. It doesn't read that way. It's not meant to be read that way. Okay. So when we think of words like in Hebrew, the bloods, or frankly, words that we have translated into the singular, but almost exclusively it's in the plural in Hebrew, such as maybe the most well-known is Elohim, which of course means, literally it means gods. It's the plural word for gods. But when it's in reference to God, right, we translate it as the singular with the uppercase G. But the word is plural. And particularly at Christmas time, when we hear the word cherubim, for example, and seraphim, okay? Again, because you and I are enlightened, we would never add an S to those words. Why? They're already plural, right? So we have these, and so when we translate, sometimes, as the old saying goes, we lose something in translation. So that's the first thing. The second I want to say, as we go back to last week, is this. You may recall that there was a fair amount of, actually a number of references to God is my helper. God is my helper. God helps. Remember this, right? It's in the present tense. Not that once upon a time God helped me and you're on your own right now. But God helps. God is helping. Okay? And I was thinking about this as a way of understanding maybe even more, for myself and I hope for all of us, maybe even more sort of deeply the meaning of that. Because you and I know what help is. I mean, we have a book, we have a movie called what? The Help, right? Okay, we know what help is. We know what help me with this is. In other words, we have a frame of reference, but this is different. And therein lies, not the challenge for us, but therein lies what I would propose to you, a bit of an invitation to think more widely. And so this is how I want to put it in context for us. I can think of 2 words in Spanish for help. One is very common. Okay? One is very common. And so we know what that word is, most of us. And if you know a little bit of Spanish, and by the way, you remember Alexander Pope famously said, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing, right? We are surrounded in this country and in this world by a lot of little knowledge. And in some cases, no knowledge. And that probably is less dangerous, but nonetheless dangerous. A little knowledge is a dangerous thing. So the word for Spanish is ayudar, right? To help. Anyone, the second word? Right. Because we don't use it often and we don't think of it this way. But I want to propose to you that the second word is socorro. Now, I can tell from your face, no one is saying, oh yeah, that makes sense to me. You're not saying that because we don't use it. But actually, with the exception maybe of the younger generation, okay, we do have an English word that is based on the same Latin root of that word. And that English word is soccer, okay, as in S-U-C-C-O-R, to give succor to someone. By the way, this is not someone is a sucker. This is to give succor to someone is to do what? To help them. Now, you might be sitting thinking, where in the world are we going with this? All right, here's where we're going with this. It is that second word that I believe corresponds to the text. That when God is your helper, okay, stay with me here. Okay. When the woman is created in Genesis, the description is that the woman will be what? A helper to the man. Right? I want to pause there for us. And I'm going to put you on the spot because I believe every single one of us has in our head an idea of what that means. So, what do you think that means?
Hopefully, that the woman is more sophisticated than the man. If the man is out mucking things up, the woman helps make things better.
Denise turns to him and says, "That's really sweet." Okay.
Just not
To work alongside of. To work alongside
to,
of.
to work alongside of. Okay. Is the woman more sophisticated in that description? By the way, I don't want, this is not a moment where I'm destroying your sort of idea of what they ate in the garden. There is no apple. I'm sorry to have to tell you this. Okay? That doesn't exist. We don't know what it is. Likely it is, this is less enticing, but probably a pomegranate. Okay? But who ate of the apple, the fruit? The woman, right? And then she did what? Shared it. She offered it to the man. And he said what? Trick question. He said nothing. Okay? He took and he ate. Not a good moment. The woman, when she was offered the fruit, did what? She debated. She said, you know, this is a bad idea. We were told. And she went back and forth. Now, she still did eat. Okay. So we have this idea of the woman as the helper. And last time, we used the word, I'm not going to put it up here. I guess if you can see it, you may recall the word that is used in Hebrew is pronounced ezer. And we know that word not for its own sake, but for its connection with the name Ebenezer. It's the second part of that word, okay, which we sometimes use in reference to God. God is my rock, if you will, is what it is. Now, what does this all mean? That word is only used in the Hebrew Bible, with one exception. It's used exclusively in reference to God, with one exception. So, folks, here is the exception. The only other time it's used not in reference to God, it is in reference to the woman who's being created. It's a remarkable moment. So this concept of helper is not, would you take the trash out? That's a good thing, by the way. I just want to be very clear about that. Okay? Or pick up, right? But this is almost a sense of to save someone. It's what one scholar, a French scholar by the name of Samuel Terrien, refers to. It is to save the man from his existential loneliness. And for those of us, not in here because we're enlightened, but for those folks out there who might say, well, God never changes God's mind. I don't want to pop that balloon for you here, but let me go ahead and do that anyway. Do you remember how that text begins? When God looks at the man in Genesis, and God says what? It is not good for the man to be alone. But prior to that, How did God pronounce creation? Good? Very good. Individual parts of creation was good. Collectively, creation was pronounced as very good. And of course, we know the word very means what? Truly, as in the Latin veritas. It was truly good. And then it follows up by God saying what? It is not good. And specifically, what is not good? Aloneness is not good. And we can extrapolate from that to mean that there is a place for companionship, for community. Not loneliness, right? You may be surrounded by 1,000,000 people and still be what? Lonely. But aloneness, so that this person would be a helper who would save this person from his existential aloneness. It's a profound moment. So we come back to this idea that we ended on last time. If I need to have someone here help me move this podium, I will use Ayudar. However, if I am in the deep end of a pool and I can't swim, I'm not using Ayudar. I am shouting what? Socorro. Save me. Save. I want your help. But what I want is for you to save me. And that, by the way, is what this whole idea of help God as the helper. It is someone who is not just sort of, holding our hand, important as that might be, right? But this is someone who will save us. Finally, on that point, from an academic context now, you know the word pedagogy, right? It often has to do with what? Teaching, method, and so on, right? But what does the word really mean? It actually comes from the Greek word of a pedagogue, is someone who holds the hand of someone else and leads them. And this is where we get the word, for example, pedestrian, or even pediatrician. Okay? It's the same root, and it has to do with a child. Okay? This, in other words, helping here is not only holding the hand of a child and leading them. That's important. This is actually saving, if you will. And so the transition to today. Genesis begins, God created the heavens and the earth, right? In the Hebrew, it begins, Bereshit bara Elohim hashamayim va'aretz. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. It's beautiful. Beautiful. It sounds great in English. It's fantastic in Hebrew. Okay? The heavens and the earth. And by the way, heavens, it's the same word for what? Sky. It's really, in the beginning, God created the skies and the earth. And we look to the skies. Okay? So here is the thing. Is creation over? It says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Is it done? No. So, what's our role? By the way, this is not a new idea. There are those people who believe that God created the heavens and the earth. So it says, right? And God says, you guys out there, take care of it. From here on out, you're it. Now, I'm being very sort of simplistic here. But essentially, that group would be what? Deists. Deists. Which, by the way, most of the founding fathers of this country were deists. Don't let folks tell you otherwise. Or you can go read it or take my word for it as well. However, what's the challenge there? What's the challenge if you're a deist?
Well, it's that God made the earth and left.
And left.
God is,
And I'm looking at you, Greg, to see what you're going to do with this.
yeah,
And how have we done so far?
not very well.
And so, by the way, when there's suffering, and when there's pain, and when there's tragedy, and when there's violence, and when there's destruction, right? What do you do as a deist? You're it. You're it. Okay? On the other hand, there's the theist. Is the one who believes in God, right? As one does, but one who also believes that God continues to be active in the universe. Okay? With us, in a way, as partners. And I suppose that helps, because then it makes sense with prayers, doesn't it? Then you can pray and wait and connect because you believe that God is still active in the universe. So we get to this text now, and can we envision a new creation, which is how the Isaiah 65 text begins? Think about this. For I am about to create new heavens and a new earth. By the way, we should stop at that verse and spend a long time wondering, what in the world does this mean? I am saying to you, according to this text, 700 years before the time, well, 600, of Jesus, we have the prophet Isaiah saying that God will create a new heavens and a new earth. What does this mean? What do we do with Bereshit bara Elohim hashomam va'aretz? What do we do in the beginning God created heavens and the earth? What do we do with all of that? And the newness here. The former things. Again, if you can resolve that opening half of the first verse, what are the former things? Yes, I know, literally you could say, well, those things that have gone before us. And of course, you know by now, I will ask you, what things? What things that have gone before us, the former things, shall not be remembered. I will wipe that away from your memory. Be glad and rejoice forever in what I am creating. Look at this. I'm about to create a new heavens and a new earth. And then I am creating. And I have to admit, I don't know how English grammar is taught here. That's not a good or bad thing. I just don't know. Not having been through high school here. And in fact, if it's taught. But English grammar, by the English, who always saw themselves as the center of the universe, as you well know. Do you know what O levels and A levels are? Okay? It's the English comprehensive exams. I'm all choked up because of it. It's the English comprehensive exams that you must pass to go on to university, the A levels in particular. O levels will be the equivalent of 12th grade, okay? But it's all comprehensive. Your teachers have absolutely no role in it whatsoever. These are all written by examiners from London or Oxford or Cambridge. and they are sent. And you better be prepared. And one of my A levels, by the way, you generally do 3 and you study for 2 years. That's how in depth they want you to. You study these 3 subjects in depth for 3 years. And mine, which I was fortunate to be able to do, was English literature, economics, and French, Louis XIV, and Tudor history. Okay? Please go ahead and ask me how important all of that is to my life today. The word irrelevant comes to mind. Okay? Except if you see something about Cardinal Richelieu and Jeopardy and you start jumping up for joy. But here's the thing. In the literature syllabus, every single thing, every single piece was from British literature. Not a single work from the United States or from any other part of the world. Because why would we need that, right? And they taught grammar. You have to know grammar. In case you missed it the first time, it's all about grammar. And so you hear these phrases like present progressive, and you're thinking, what in the world? But what it is this: I am creating, right? It is ongoing. And this new creation now will be for what? Jerusalem as a joy, and its people as a delight. I will rejoice in Jerusalem and delight in my people. If I'm creating something new and Jerusalem is going to be a joy, it presupposes that currently Jerusalem is what? Not a joy. There is no delight in Jerusalem. There is no joy in Jerusalem. And in part because in that time, what? The folks are coming back, still out, I mean, they're back from exile, but things do not get repaired overnight. But I will create a time when there will be joy. Now, let me pause there for a second. Again, there are folks who would say, first of all, we had the Old Testament, and now we have the New Testament, and everything in the Old Testament has been fulfilled in the New Testament. The only way that works is how? You have not read the Old Testament. That's the only way that works. Here is the thing. At the end of the day, right, what we have here is something that says creation continues to be. We're part of that. And there are things that will be fulfilled, but clearly have not been fulfilled. And now it is 2,600 years later, and the world, let's be honest, by any definition, is in turmoil. Right? So we're waiting. Okay. Again, let me give you an example. As you well know, the first gospel, as far as we know, and it's fairly well established now, the first gospel that was written was the Gospel of Mark. Okay? Never mind the sequence in the Bible. We know that sequence, you know, that's just been the way it's put together. Okay? And in fact, it differs, the Hebrew Bible in its order differs from the Old Testament. The books are all there, it's just that the order is different. In the Old Testament, the last book is what? Malachi. In the Hebrew, it's Chronicles. It's very different. They're all there, just different order. If you read Mark, and then Matthew, and then Luke, what we know from the history is that Mark was probably written when? At least a generation after Jesus. At least a generation. And so you might very well ask, as I hope we do, why would you wait for a generation to capture this? Come on now, track with me.
Because they thought he was coming
Because if I say to you, give me some time, I'll be back in a little while. That language is used. Will you expect that to be when? 2,800 years later? Soon, right? It's a natural thing. But Jesus did not give, he doesn't give a timeline. He says, trust me, I will be back. And they waited, and before we know it, the disciples or the followers started writing stuff down. Did they capture everything? No. Did they agree with everything? No. Okay? We don't have, for example, a birth story in Mark or John. That was not their interest. So all I'm saying is that when we read this, we can't jump to the conclusion, or what Walter Brueggemann would sometimes say, he's been accused of making an interpretive leap. Okay? We can't make an interpretive leap here and say, well, it's all been fulfilled. No. All of a sudden, the prophet is saying something new is about to happen. And then, Jerusalem will be a time, will be a place, but it's more than a place. It's a what? It's an idea. It's an idea. There will be a time of joy that will come. And because we are who we are, we will naturally ask what? When? And the answer is, trust me in this. It will come. And so you journey from now to then, believing that the time will come. Here's the thing. It will come because what is currently happening in the time of the prophet and following the prophet, right, will not be the standard. The status quo will not be the standard. There will come a time when there will be joy and there will be delight, and no more will there be the sound of weeping. But we still have the sound of weeping. Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you have not. How many times, you remember that? You have killed the prophets. There is still the time of weeping. Yeah.
So if this is a digression, lay aside your shit, but I've heard people talk about Jerusalem, not that Jerusalem is a place, but it's not necessarily the city of Jerusalem. It's a place that the individual has inside, or that the individual occupies, or something like that. And they spin this whole thing of Jerusalem as joy, as you are freed of oppression, as you are freed of weeping, that you find that Jerusalem inside of yourself that's a joyful Jerusalem.
Right, Jerusalem. Yes, and it's not clearly when you hear Jerusalem. Literally, of course, we know that the word means Yerushalayim, Yerushalayim. Okay, I'm going to make a plug. I don't know if you're planning to be here this evening for that meal and sort of the Seder meal this evening. So I'll talk a little bit about that this evening. Okay, but you will hear Yerushalayim, Yerushalayim, right? Which is simply the Hebrew Jerusalem, the city of peace. And so it's natural when you see this, you think as a place, the city of peace. It's the idea, okay? And so you want to make a distinction between place and the space. This is a space within us. And there will come a time, maybe not only for individuals, but maybe for creation, because this is the context in which it's placed, that in creation there will be a time when there is the sound of weeping and the cry of distress. Think about this. Will not be there. Infants will not die. I mean, this is, we're not just playing stop and go here. Infants will not die. But infants do die. one of our sons is a pediatric oncologist, our oldest child. Okay? And you know, the span of this, right, is from infancy to teenage years. And I will tell you what you already know. Infants die. They do. I don't know how else to put it. But here's the text that says, there will come a time. And so this is not so much that we are invited to look for a time in the future when no infant will die, but we're looking for a time when what has become a part of the landscape of everyday life will no longer be, but there will be joy and delight. An old person who does not live out a lifetime, but one who dies at 100 years, will be considered a youth. And one who falls short of 100 years will be considered accursed. How could you possibly not live to 100? That's the line. But we don't. And so it says, there will come a time when they will build houses and inhabit them. As if to suggest what? You will build houses and you will inhabit them. And you will live in these houses. Does it remind you of anything? It's almost as if it's a reflection. And let me take you back to Jeremiah's letter to the exiles. It's a letter that at the root, and I think I share this imagery with you, and you know the imagery that says, it is like, and I quote, pouring salt in your wound. Pouring salt in a wound. The wound itself is so painful, and you pour salt, and you will find yourself crying bloody murder because of the pain. But it's supposed to do what? It's supposed to heal, right? And I guess it does. But between now and then, between that moment of pouring salt and the actual salt in your wound, okay, it might only last a few seconds, but that's painful. So let me read you the section. Jeremiah is about to write a painful letter to the exiles. And this is what he says. This letter was sent, right, to the people. Thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, to all the exiles whom I have sent into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon. Right? Build houses and live in them. Plant gardens and eat what they produce. Take wives and have sons and daughters. Take wives for your sons and give your daughters in marriage, that they may bear sons and daughters. Multiply there and do not decrease. But seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile, and pray to the Lord on its behalf, for in its welfare you will find your welfare. Right? Seek the welfare of the city in which I have sent you, because in their welfare you will find your welfare. Let me translate for you. You're heading into exile, and the only way you're going to survive in exile is to care for those who have taken you into exile. And you might say, well, I'm not doing that. And the prophet will say, if you don't, then your welfare, then in fact you will have no welfare. Now, if you looked, I don't know if you could see this. it's a common word used all over. I suspect it's not common to you, but trust me in this, it's common. Okay? And of course, you know it more like this. Shalom. Which of course is generally translated, of course, what? Peace, right? And by the way, it's the Hebrew version of the Arabic or the Arabic version of the Hebrew. If you're in midst of Jerusalem and you say Shalom Aleichem, peace be unto you. But depending if you're in the Arab quarters, you might very well say what? Assalamu alaikum. It's literally exactly the same letters, okay, in a different language. Peace be unto you. Why is this important? This, my friends, is what the English translates as welfare. This is why this is important. In order for you to survive, you have to seek the peace of those who have taken you into exile, because in their peace you will find your peace. If you think that the bar is high, this runs absolutely contrary to the human impulse, doesn't it? No, I don't want to do this. You're telling me those who have captured me into exile, I'm now going to seek their peace? And how do the people respond? Do you remember Psalm 137? Where the Babylonian captors are saying what? Sing us one of them songs that you used to sing to your, right? And the people said, can we sing the Lord's song in a foreign land? Actually, the answer is yes, you can. Is it easy? No. Is it welcome? No. Here's what I'd really like to do. Because of what you have done to us, I would like to take your little children and bash their heads against the rock. I want to be clear. That's not what I'm saying. That's what the text says. That is the human impulse, to get back. But there will come a time, according to the prophet, when you will be home again and you don't have to build houses in a foreign land. You will build homes, you will live in them. You will plant vineyards and you will eat their fruit. You will not build and another inhabit. You will not plant and another eat, like the days of old. They shall not labor in vain or bear children for calamity. What's calamity? Again, it's a perfectly fine English word that we hardly ever use. Earthquake.
Calumny.
Say that again, Greg.
Calumny.
Calamity. Chaos. Disaster. Disorder. And the Hebrew here literally means sudden terror. Sudden terror. There will come a time when you will not face sudden terror. Think about it. I think that time has not arrived. But there will come a time that before you call, I will answer. And you have to ask, excuse me, how is that going to work? Because can I really answer a question that you have before you even ask the question? I suppose there are some instances where I can preempt that question. But that's not what it's saying here. Before you call out for help, I will answer you. And that is why this word, which is so common, provide, is critical. Why? We know what provide is. It's very common, it's part of our vocabulary. It's rooted in our lexicon of everyday life. But the word means what? The capacity for what? One who could see ahead. That's what it means. It's the part of the word that gives us words like vision and video, having to do with sight. And therefore, God will provide. Why? Because according to the text, the God in whom we believe has the capacity to see ahead. So before you call, I will grant you, I will answer. It's a remarkable thing. But does that always happen? It doesn't mean that God does not see ahead. Next week we don't meet, or the following week. I don't think. That's when we have our guest. But we will have 3 other, to end the year, Sundays, which I have told Pastor Dave I've entitled Texts of Terror. It seems like a nice way to head into summer. There are many of them, and one of those that I plan to deal with is the sacrifice slash, I shouldn't use the word slash with terror, but sacrifice of Isaac, the binding of Isaac. And we have this language in there that says, trust me, I will provide. And it takes a great deal of trust. So we will deal with that. I happen to think it's one of the most horrific texts in all of the Bible. Hence, text of terror. So God will provide, it says. And here is how it ends. There will come a time, I want to see this time, by the way, but it will not happen in our lifetime. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news here. But there will come a time when the wolf and the lamb shall feed together. What many have referred to as what kind of a kingdom? A peaceable kingdom. What does it mean to have a peaceable kingdom? When all of creation will dwell with each other. I mean, envision this. When the lion shall eat straw like the ox, and the serpent his food will be dust, they will not hurt or destroy on my holy mountain. It's remarkable. There will come a time, according to this, so according to Acts, which is the second lesson, and I'm going to rush through this because we don't have a lot of time. It says, God anointed Jesus of Nazareth with the Holy Spirit and with power, and he went about doing good and healing. Okay? So we have 3 ideas that have emerged for us. I don't think I'm asking for much. Can we live both in an environment, individually and collectively, in peace? Second, how about doing good? And third, how about healing? Am I asking too much? All of which, at some level in our lives, in this time, in this place, seems elusive, doesn't it? And yet we have to be and do good. We have to be well and do good. One of my refrains that I tell faculty, which seems like initially to be an afterthought, now they know it isn't. And I tell them, I want for all of us in opening convocations, in the convening, in the division meetings, I said, I want for all of us to be better tomorrow. And the next day. And the next day. In part because there is always, 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 always room to be better. personally and professionally. Be a better person. And I have had one faculty member who wrote back and says, essentially, I think I've reached the pinnacle of my life. And I'm thinking, really? Shortly thereafter, we had a come to Jesus meeting where I had to remind him, if this is the pinnacle of your life, right, it's a sad state of affairs. No, we want, according to this. This is what Jesus set out to do. And the Hebrew concept of tikkun, which is very much a part of, if you will, Jewish thought, particularly during this time of Passover. And it means healing or restoration. And I've seen posters and t-shirts that simply says tikkun. Everything else is commentary. That's what you want. A time of healing and restoration. Everything else after that is commentary. And so how do we end up here? We end up with Mary Magdalene. And I want to say a word about Mary, in part. 3 more slides. Because when you think of Mary Magdalene, let's be upfront here, right? The one young person has left, so we can speak openly now. What is the title, what is the description of Mary Magdalene that we've inherited? That she is what? A prostitute, right?
Yeah, but when did that show up?
It's great sometimes to read these English translations, particularly of the New Testament, well, both Testaments, when, translators want to stay away from words that have a kind of an edge to it. So instead of prostitute, she is sometimes referred to as what? A harlot. As if somehow, that makes me feel a lot better. Okay. But where does it say that Mary Magdalene was a prostitute? It doesn't. It doesn't. It's a terrible disservice. And I want to focus on this for one moment. Right? Who goes to the tomb first? Mary. Where are the men?
Too scared.
They're hiding. Yeah, they're sort of reflecting on the good old days. And then they come, and one is afraid to get into the tomb. The other